Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers as we get set for the Sweet 16 tonight. It begins with 4 games and then 4 more games coming up tomorrow. And we're going to look at the action tonight. You got games in San Francisco and San Antonio. We'll see if this is Coach K's final game on the sidelines or it'll be extended for another game coming up on Saturday. But let's get into all of the discussion now. Stephanie Otey joining us, as well as Bruce Marshall. He is live in the great state of Arizona and checking out some spring training and some other things going on. Bruce, good to see you again. College basketball leader at Vegas Insider as far as units go. And I guess quick review of the weekend. Your thoughts on what you saw round of 64 and round of 32.
Yeah, Kevin, and hi, Steph, too. I think the ACC was really the story last weekend, and so many of the talking heads seem to dismiss that league. I think because a lot of the Louisville and NC State and Georgia Tech type teams had off years this year. Therefore, they just trashed the whole league. But here we go into this weekend, and they've got as many teams left as any league. And I think the Big 12 has 3 and the ACC has 3. ACC had a great record last weekend. I think it was 8-2 for all this weekend. Notre Dame won the extra game. Notre Dame certainly could have been here too. But I think the fact the ACC teams were a lot better than people expected. Certainly North Carolina's upset over Baylor played into that. And the fact that Big Ten was exposed a little bit. Only 2 of those 9 teams have advanced, and it was a dicey weekend for the Big Ten. So by me, at least, it was sort of the ACC revenge on the talking heads with this performance last week.
Looking at the teams there, we can expect the unexpected basically when it comes to March. But looking at how some of these teams had pulled off an upset, who do you think has the biggest target on their back as an underdog?
Well, the underdog that has a chance, most of them do. The one I really expect to win is Providence. I think they're going to give Kansas all sorts of trouble. And Providence flew a little bit under the radar last weekend, I think. They dismantled 2 very, very dangerous. I mean, we knew South Dakota State could shoot those threes. They were the best 3-point shooting team in the country. And Providence just diffused that Jackrabbits offense and held them in check. And then Richmond, although Richmond, could have been a bit flat perhaps after the upset win of its own against Iowa, another Big Ten team that went down. That was no contest, that game. Providence, keep this in mind. I mean, this is an old team, and I joked about it last week, but Ed Cooley puts a lineup on the floor that's older than the Oklahoma City Thunder most nights. So they're very mature. He's got some transfers in there. They balance the floor extremely well. They have a post-scoring threat in Nate Watson. Horchler is a stretch. He's a difficult matchup, and those guards are all very good. And they've won games, and they've won a lot of close games this year too. They didn't have to last weekend. Kansas is going to have a real challenge in this game, especially Remy Martin played better. But I mean, his MO throughout his career at Arizona State and even early, he had some injury problems this year earlier, but inconsistency is sort of his middle name. And that has not been the case with Providence. They have been solid all year. I think this is an upset waiting to happen in the Midwest.
Now, looking at another Big 12 team, Bruce, tonight, Texas Tech and Duke. And Texas Tech, best defensive efficiency team in the country. We saw they were able to move on without Chris Beard, and Texas is now out. But obviously the story will be with Coach Krzyzewski if Duke can continue or if this is Krzyzewski's last game. Duke outlasted Michigan State in the last round. The number is now at a pick 'em at most places. What do you think if Duke can continue here and move on to the Elite Eight?
It's possible if Banchero can just take over the game like he did last weekend against Michigan State, and Duke was in serious trouble. It looked like the hourglass was about to empty on Coach K's career. And they just started to run the offense through Banchero late, and he was able to make some things happen. Here's where I think they're going to have a problem here against Texas Tech, a better version of Michigan State. Again, veteran presence, all these transfers that Coach Adams brought in, O'Banner, Williams, very physical up front. And they are also big out on the perimeter, too. And I think one issue that Coach K is going to have here, his guards are a little bit smaller. So I think they're going to have some real matchup problems out in the perimeter. You've got to keep Texas Tech off the boards. Again, veteran team versus a team that's much younger on the Duke side here. They flew very close to the flame last week against Michigan State. Amazing that they ended up covering the point spread in that game too. But Texas Tech, to me, with the way these guys have stepped up here and delivering down the stretch and the power they have on the boards there, they really won that game late because they were able to get inside, and Williams and O'Banner doing that work against Notre Dame. Texas Tech wins this game.
So looking at AJ Griffin, he had an ankle sprain in the last game. Coach K does say that he will be able to play. It was an ankle sprain that he's had some injuries before, but he's averaging 10 points, 4 rebounds. He's their most proficient 3-point shooter. How much of a threat is he, considering if he is 100%?
Well, yeah, it would certainly help to have him at 100%. That's going to be important. I think Duke's going to have to be firing on all cylinders here tonight. If they're going to survive against Texas Tech here in the Sweet 16. But, the fundamental problem I think Coach K is going to have is actually out on the perimeter here. And Texas Tech is just so much bigger out on the perimeter. And to keep those guys off the glass, I mean, Griffin's going to have to do a great job trying to keep these guys off the boards. Kevin mentioned that defense that Texas plays too. Pretty darn nasty. Duke, they pushed it right to the edge last week. I'm not sure they can keep surviving if they have to wait and leave it late like they did last week.
Now, Bruce, you're out in Arizona right now. You're not next to Tucson, but the Wildcats, though, laying 1.5, 2 against Houston. A lot of people want to buy into the underdog here with Kelvin Sampson, Arizona, who's coming off that overtime win over TCU in the round of 32. You think Arizona continues here? I mean, this is a tough road for the Wildcats. You get Houston and then maybe Villanova next, assuming Michigan doesn't pull off the upset. But you think Arizona can get through this road here, or they're not going to make it through the weekend?
I don't think they will. And I think when I talked to you guys last week, I thought that might be the best team in the tournament. I'm thinking about that now. And you look at Arizona in that game. I don't know. Tommy did some different things in that game. I think it's because of the matchups and maybe because TCU had a little bit more quickness. We didn't see too much of Tubelis, the 6'11" guy who would normally play up at the high post. And I think he believed that would put his team as a disadvantage defensively. Tubelis only played 13 minutes in that game. And in turn, you saw TCU really crash the offensive boards and 19 offensive rebounds in that game. So they really abused Arizona off the glass. I don't know that he's going to use Tubelis as much as he might think Houston does the same sorts of things, a little bit smaller, a little bit quicker. But I didn't really like the way he didn't use Tubelis last week. Kriya, the point guard, did return. He has got to shoot a lot better than 1 for 10. He wasn't helping Arizona too much. And Matherin, for all of his explosiveness, watch this guy. It's either dunks or 3-pointers with him. I mean, that's something I think Kelvin Sampson can defend. Listen, I tell you this, Houston impressed me so much. You mentioned about their defense being so solid. And it is, again, another team with some size out there on the prayer. Edwards, the transfer from Texas Tech, is coming here and stepped up as a go-to scorer, although it's a pretty collective effort. But, after Sasser went down early in the season, they thought Houston would struggle some. They filled in the gaps quite nicely. We'll see how Arizona. I was a little, just the fundamental thing, and it wasn't just Arizona, it's some other here. These screens up high and against Miles from TCU last week. They kept trying to fight over the top of these screens. Listen, Miles wasn't shooting that great last week. Go underneath the screen. Don't worry about trying to fight through everything, because if you lose just a half step there, a guy like Miles will swing around and he'll go into the key and he'll put up those shots. But the defense, I thought, left something to be desired for Arizona last week. I think they're in trouble here tonight. And then, again, flying close to the flame. TCU really should have won that game. And Houston's a better version of TCU.
Looking at that matchup, coming off of the Houston game, a lot of people have hype on Houston, but Illinois didn't show up. And so I'm wondering which matchup do you think we learned more from, Houston and Illinois, or do you think that there's a lot of, issues that Arizona could be exposed of up against Houston tonight?
A little bit of both, Steph. But by me, Arizona struggling the way it did to keep TCU off the glass. And the rotations that Tommy Lloyd used, that would be a concern to me for the Arizona side. Houston, yeah, I mean, you're right. Illinois, wasn't firing on all cylinders, but I think Houston had a lot to do with it. Houston took them out of what they wanted to do, and they were pretty physical on the inside against Cochran, and the guards played great. It's a tough matchup for Arizona. Like I said, a better version of TCU, which almost won the game last week in San Diego.
Now, the one game I want to look at for tomorrow, Bruce, is this St. Peter's Purdue game. And I'm already under the impression, not that I'm breaking news, Shaheen Holloway, he ends up, if St. Peter's can't win this game against Purdue, he's out the door and he's going over to Seton Hall. And he'll take the job that Kevin Willard left to go to Maryland, that he'll be the next coach of Seton Hall. He's done such a great job. He's a point guard there. He'll be there next. Do you think St. Peter's, they've covered 9 straight, you think they can get one more here and at least get within the number against Purdue or not?
Well, I like it. I love the story. And you're right. I mean, it's quicker than Golden left USF for Florida, I think, after last week. Listen, Purdue is going to feel like a Gulliver on the island with the Lilliputians here, I think, because they're so much bigger. And there's Banks on the screen. Banks has been very good. Eater's been very good. These guards are kind of fearless for St. Peter's. However, and Defoe, there's 6'7". He's Defensive Player of the Year in the Metro Atlantic. But you've got a 7'4" guy in Edey. You got another 6'10" guy in Williams. You just don't see guys like that in the Metro Atlantic. And St. Peter's did beat Kentucky last week with Big Oscar. They had a lot of trouble keeping Oscar off the boards. But 2 of these guys, Kentucky also couldn't shoot last week, and they don't have a guy like Jaden Ivey. I just think the fundamentals are just too difficult.
Hey, we're going to take
Yeah, they're a little bit slow getting back on defense. I'm not sure St. Peter's likes to push the pace that much. So they're going to have to execute so well. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I was getting a little bit of a delay there too. But do you think that St. Peter's, they're going up against a very professional offense. They were able to pull off some upsets, but it's still Jaden Ivey they're going to see. So how do you think this one fares? Do you think that they can cover the 12.5?
I don't think so. Although they're scrappy and maybe they do, but lots of times, these dreamers in the tournament, the farther they go, they start losing sleep, and usually the Sweet 16 is where it ends for these teams. Or Roberts last year, Florida Gulf Coast a few years ago. Fundamentally, I think they're in a lot of trouble here tonight, just with the size disadvantage, and Purdue. Purdue is really going to cause some problems for them. I'm just not sure the matchups. Even the best defensive player for St. Peter's, like I said, is Defoe, but I'm not sure how they use him. Do you put him on Edey on the big guy night? Do you put him on Ivy outside? They're at a big disadvantage physically here, more than they would have been even against Kentucky last. So I think that's a problem for St. Peter's. I'd love to see him hang in there. I'm not sure they can do it.
Bruce Marshall, you could check him out at Vegas Insider. He's the top college basketball handicapper on the season, and he'll have more selections for the Sweet 16 tonight and tomorrow, as well as the Elite 8 coming up this weekend. And we'll see who's going to New Orleans. We'll find out this weekend who the Final Four teams will be in college basketball. Bruce, thank you so much for the time. As always, have fun out in Arizona. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you, kids.
All right, there is Bruce Marshall. and always enjoyed talking to Bruce there. I know the connection was a little shaky, but it's going to get some insight though from Bruce. And before we continue, Steph, wanted to mention about your social media. You have to check this out. Well, I mean, you did not you personally check it out, but you have made several videos throughout the NCAA tournament. This one, I think this one takes the cake. I think this is the one that you really stepped up with. If anybody remembers, if you are in your, trying to think of the age
Sweet 16. It's not. I've been editing
30.
that video all day yesterday. I can't get out of my head. I feel like I'm in high school again.
If you are in your 30s, maybe.
Okay, whoa. Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Still got some 20s left.
If you're in your 20s, 30s, when did it come out? What was it, like
I mean, I was definitely in middle school, but it was like a long running show. But I do remember it being a thing before my actual 16th birthday. So
did you get a Bentley for your Sweet 16 like all the kids on there? Or you
no, I'm one of 4 kids, and like we would just keep passing it down. It was a much older BMW. It was pretty dated, but we called it the Favenoza because that was the license plate. So FA7OZA.
Now, for people that don't know the reference, so there was a show on MTV in 15 years ago-ish, whatever it was. It was called My Super Sweet 16. And it was basically about these really rich kids that were turning 16 and they were having a big blowout for their 16th birthday. But it wasn't like something at a restaurant or you invite some friends. It was like this big thing. The parents had 6-digit budgets. The kids would
in
get
with
like
helicopters, everything.
They get a Porsche or a Bentley or a Lexus. It was just disgusting and on all the levels. And they had like this massive party, DJs, everything. And Stephanie, she ended up doing like a parody of it with the Sweet 16 teams left in the NCAA tournament. So check it out. It's on your Twitter and I guess on your Instagram. It's a minute long. So this isn't like a long thing.
Yeah.
It's really
I'll
funny.
rattle off the party goers, the guest list, the people who made the cut, because the show, everybody wants the invite. And sometimes the invites were insane. Like I remember, I think this was either in Gossip Girl or it was an actual episode of Sweet 16 where people were getting like bottles of champagne. But now that I think about it, had to have been Gossip Girl because it was a Sweet 16. But like their invites were so like lavish and everything. So getting an invite is a big deal. So I have Houston and I have the video in the locker room, the hype with the shirt off, all of that. The hype man at the center of the dance floor. St. Peter's, it's this kid's first college party. Michigan is the guy who starts the fight. UNC, Kansas, Duke, UCLA, those are the guys who never miss the party. Gonzaga is the guy that, everybody, chose them to win their brackets. I have him with all the prom king votes. Arkansas is the only guy on the football team that can hoop because he's repping the SEC. Providence is the guy who keeps getting lucky. Texas Tech, the guy that made you regret dumping your ex. Miami is the one who threw the surprise party because they were probably the most surprising team. Villanova, and Bruce actually even kind of alluded it, is the guy that she told you not to worry about. You maybe, it's the friend that's always around, and then you're like, oh shoot, maybe he was a problem. Iowa State is the guy who had the glow up after, their turnaround of a season from last year. Arizona, the young kids, the younger siblings crashing the party. They haven't been to an after party since 2001. And then Purdue, the one who's always the bridesmaid, where in the Big Ten, usually they make an appearance, but usually they're not the bride. They're usually the bridesmaid. So those are the beats.
I thought the funniest one was Michigan, the guy who always starts the fight.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty funny at Providence. The guy
I
who
like the hype
lucky.
man. I liked Houston too. That was a fun one.
No,
like
it was really
and there's
cool.
a dance circle.
It's funny, and it's even funnier if you understand the references. Like if you see the show, you get it even more because you're like, oh, okay, like this is what it is, and the show.
And now I think I should have had a party crasher, like one who is there that shouldn't have been there, but I would have made that St. Peter's, but they deserved, they won. They deserved to be there. So I was trying to think of the one that just like snuck their way in, but we didn't really have any of those that had like a ton of foul calls in their favor or something like that. But that would have been a fun one.
Did you see the guy from St. Peter's, the guy with the mustache? He
Yeah,
now has, I think, an NIL with Buffalo Wild Wings.
oh gosh.
He was
Well,
just
you know
eating
what?
wings, and it's
March
like,
is the time to do that. Like I always say, it was the saddest thing when we lost the 2020 tournament because so many or guys who weren't draft prospects could turn into, they get the eyes of the world on them, and maybe someone didn't see them play, and then hey, they could get a draft pick. So NIL is actually even better because there's more opportunity in NIL than I think there would be for draft picks. So
no,
good for
it's
him.
great, and this is a great time of year. I don't really know how far. I mean, I can't think St. Peter's beats Purdue. I really don't. And Purdue, I know we dogged them a lot and said that,
Yeah.
I didn't think they go very far, and they drew Yale in the first round and they outlasted Texas. I cannot see St. Peter's beating Purdue. I know a lot of people are jumping on them, and they're not playing far. They're out of Jersey City, which is closer to New York than Philly, but still it's a closer ride, I guess, from St. Peter's than obviously Purdue going to Philadelphia. I don't know. I just can't see where they win again. I can't do it.
I will say that for one thing, I always dog New York because it's to me not a sports town, and I'm always looking for the pack bar with the games on, and sometimes that's hard to find. But I'm hearing a lot of good things about St. Peter's because it's right over in Jersey City. You can take a PATH train over. It's literally 15 minutes from New York, and everyone's like, they had no idea that it was right over there, which is small world. It's literally a rock stone throw away. But I think that's really funny. So in New York, how weird is that? They don't follow March Madness, but they're like all high on St. Peter's once in a blue moon. So
Yeah, it's
I
just
guess
never
they need schools near them to get them on the hype.
because really, what do you have? I mean, it's St. John's. That's kind of like the only
You're
one.
not going to root for Rutgers. I mean, you got
Yeah.
a powerful conference, and I mean they're the brunt of every joke in the Big Ten. So
Yeah, I mean, the Big East tournament is such a huge deal in New York, but really, your only team is St. John's. Like every other team, Villanova is the class of it. They're from Philadelphia. You don't really have a lot of these teams that represent New York City from that standpoint. But people are going to root for St. Peter's to see them keep going. And like I said before, I'm totally on the train that Shaheen Holloway is definitely getting that Seton Hall job once they get eliminated. And you see that with these coaches. You know what amazes me too, Stephanie, is that there are these coaches, they're in the tournament, they get eliminated 1 day later. Oh, it's got another job. Like, how did you get it so fast? Todd Golden was from San Francisco, went to Florida. The Murray State coach got the LSU job. Like all these guys, like a day later, oh, bye, I'm out.
I mean, it is interesting that they'll like announce it because there's lots of negotiation paperwork that goes involved. So, conversations started probably a little bit earlier, but that tells me they're getting offers that they can't turn down. Obviously, you want to move up in the ranks, but a quick turnaround like that is crazy. But at least in sports, when you find the guy, you take him. Like sometimes it's not a fit. I mean, we see so many coaching moves all the time that when you find the one you want, you got to go for it. And so go and get him, sign him immediately because it's a floating carousel a lot of the time. And then when you get a good guy, hold on to them until they retire, like Coach K,
Like, you need to move up. Like, if you're the guy from San Francisco, you leave the WCC. I mean, you're leaving San Francisco to go to Gainesville, Florida, but now you're at an SEC school. You have the football. You have all this other stuff. You have the guy from Murray State go to LSU. You have the football there. Like, it's just so much more of a selling point. I do not at all disparage them for doing that. You're getting more money, go to a bigger school, more TV time, all of that. But it always amazes me where it's like, oh, we just started talking to this guy. He's coaching another team. And now a day later, he's got that job. Like, how did you? I mean, you guys did this so fast.
It doesn't surprise me though, because like at least like even on the broadcasting side, like these things do happen fast. Like because first of all, I like there's a lot of competition, so you don't want to make them wait on you too long and things like that. But I do raise the question: out money aside, would you rather coach for or would you rather coach basketball and the SEC where football runs the show, or would you rather be not as like Indiana, for example, right now? Like they're a basketball school, but their football team did better just like a season ago, So which one would you rather want? The one that has more attention on them, but basketball is a rear view mirror, or would you rather have the strongest basketball team, but I mean, the Big Ten's a big conference. Maybe that was a bad
You mean
example.
like
But
Georgia, for instance? Georgia's a good example. If Georgia wins the championship in football and they're terrible in basketball, would you rather be at Georgia or San Francisco? I'd rather
yeah,
be at Georgia. I'd rather be at the school with who was that? Who did that? That was Buzz Williams. He left Marquette to go to Virginia Tech a few years ago. Then I was at Texas A&M. But you're wondering, Marquette's a good program. Why would you go to Virginia Tech, which is kind of a mediocre basketball program? You got the football. You got just the selling points of bringing a kid in on a football weekend. Think about this, Stephanie.
you have like
Think about
SEC
Ohio
Network
State.
too.
Okay. Like, we know Ohio State's very good in basketball too, but imagine taking a kid and taking him to the Horseshoe in October, November, and be like, look at this. Even though you're not going to play football for us, you're going to play basketball for us, but look at this atmosphere. Look at what the school can be. That's a big selling point as opposed to some schools that you don't have football. It's just basketball. I don't know. I just feel like the TV, all that, you got to go to that kind of school. It's just more big time.
I wonder, that'd be something to ask a recruit too, which one would you rather go to? Because at least like covering Ohio State football is completely different than covering Ohio State basketball. Sometimes you could have, the press room, for example, is much, much smaller. Sometimes in basketball, you'll have maybe 12 to 25 reporters post game, depending on the game. In football, there's also much less games in football, but as a first year reporter, the Ohio State beat is intimidating. Like there's so much media at any game, so it's a different beast. Like I think any non-sports fan would know more football names than they would know basketball, but hey, rosters are smaller too, but it is a second tier almost.
No, I get that. I just mean more of like, are you sold if you're a recruit seeing stuff like that? If you're at an SEC school, if you're at a Big Ten school, if you're at, I went to Florida State, and if you go to a football game there, but you're a basketball recruit, if you're like, wow, like this is just cool to see, this kind of atmosphere here, as opposed to like Gonzaga or something. We know how good Gonzaga is, but it's just.
Would you want to coach football at Kentucky?
As opposed to what?
Like, because it's kind of the same question. Would you? Because basketball runs Kentucky, but hey, like they have a huge fan base. They're very loyal fans, but you'll be coaching football. So it's what I mean. Like, would you rather coach the pride and joy of the university? It's basketball. Everybody there goes to your sport. Or would you rather have a larger fan base, but you're coaching the other sport?
Okay, I'll give you an example then. Okay, would you rather coach football at Kentucky or football at Boise State? I'd rather be at Kentucky.
So like my thought immediately went to upward mobility. So like I would want Kentucky because I think you could move up. I think that you could get a bigger job from there. But we've seen coaches from Boise State do it too. I don't know. That's a tough one. I think it's all circumstance. I would want to look at the roster. I want to look at recruiting, coaching staff, all of that.
I just feel like there is a ceiling at those schools. Like if you were to coach at Boise State and it's a really good job. There's a nice following up there. You're never going to be in a national championship. Kentucky could conceivably be in the Final Four in football. Like if they won the SEC, conceivably they could be. Where Boise State, we saw Cincinnati last year. Cincinnati's going to the Big 12, so they're going to eventually be in that class where now it's going to be easier for them. But if you're in the Sun Belt, if you're in the Mountain West, it's just hard. It's just so much harder to get to that point where Missouri, South Carolina, Kentucky could conceivably be in the Final Four because they control more of their fate, as opposed to Boise State's undefeated, but you still haven't done enough.
I have a different question. Would you rather get this is an easy one for me. Would you rather get a head coaching job at a much smaller school I would say D1. I won't drop it to D2, but a much smaller school, not a Power 5. Or would you rather want to start at like a GA, a very minor position in the top teams in the sport? We can stick with basketball for this. So or football, whichever one you prefer. But would you rather
So you
be
would
the
be
head coach?
a grad assistant at Alabama, or you're a head coach at Coastal Carolina or something like that. I'd rather.
I would go with the assistant position because I look at so many coaching trees and I think, all right, coaches build up their staff and it's got to be connections. So you want to be around, the top guys because they see what you're doing at a smaller level and they'll keep giving you opportunities.
But here's my counter on that is that, I mean, again, it's the NFL, but like with Belichick, you see a lot of his assistants have never really succeeded, even though they're underneath him. I'd rather have
Nick
that
Saban.
but I'd rather have the opportunity of being that head coach somewhere and then trying to move up than being like a GA at Alabama where you have more work to get through to prove yourself. I don't know. I just think that in the end, I'd rather be the head coach in the bigger conference. That Mark Few at Gonzaga is like the exception, that he could stay at Gonzaga forever and they're always going to be very relevant and always be like a 1 or a 2 seed because he can keep bringing kids in there. That is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, I just think that when you're surrounded by the greats, and at least I know it, and a lot of coaching circles, I know they want to build you up. They want to see their assistants become head coaches. So if you can do it at a micro level, you can move up. But if you're doing it as a head coach in a smaller school, they may not see what you're accomplishing. But when you are doing, you have a smaller role and you're doing things here and there, they're at least seeing what you're doing up close. So who knows when a coach throws a punch and it's next coach up, you know what I mean? Or someone gets suspended, you can get opportunities like that. You never know what can happen, but you got to be right there to have the opportunurty. So I
just had to look up Ryan Day because I didn't know his background. I didn't realize that was his first.
Ryan Day was a quarterbacks coach at Ohio State. Ermeyer found him, really believed in him. And I'll even admit, I didn't, when Urban was retiring, I didn't know if I had faith in Ryan Day. He was younger, wasn't a head coach yet, but Urban loved his offensive mind. He had great quarterbacks. So I was iffy on it. We saw 3 games of him during Urban Meyer's suspension at Ohio State. And I trusted Urban's, he's had great coaches beneath him before. So I wasn't on board with that decision at first, but after the first big game of Ryan Day, when he got into Big Ten play, I was like, okay, this guy's the real deal.
Well, but also like Luke Fickell, he was there. He came in after Tressel, right?
Luke
and then
Fickell,
it didn't work out, but then he went to somewhere else, went to Cincinnati, and it worked out very well.
They all knew. Everyone knew Luke Fickell was the real deal. I don't know why they didn't give him the permanent long-term head coaching position. I think that they didn't know if he was ready yet. But hey, it's any day now that he moves up. Some people were questioning if Harbaugh went to the NFL, if Fickell would go to Michigan, and I will say, I've been told, it's a big job. It's a big step up from Cincinnati, but Luke Fickell is that loyal to Ohio. He didn't know if he could do it. So I don't know. I think that I think I would have taken it if I were a Buckeye. I would coach at Michigan. I think that'd be tough to do, but it's a huge opportunity.
I still thought Luke Fickell was going to be the next coach of Notre Dame. I really thought that he was going to be next in line to take that job.
Me too.
But you know what, though? But I guess what we learn is, like, all these situations it's just all individual situations. Like, Ryan Day is never a head coach, and now he's like 34-4, whatever his record is at Ohio State.
Because like Urban had a lot to do with that decision, and he had so much belief in Ryan Day. So, and then Gene Smith, the athletic director, as well. I was very close to Ryan Day also. So it was a mutual. They agreed upon it. It was kind of an easy decision for them, actually. But yeah, Luke Fickell, that one was surprising. But it's all about timing. I think has a lot to do with it. who, whenever you're a head coach, you want to bring over your own staff too. So circumstances, who can he bring over with him, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into it, but that would have been, I thought for sure he was going to take that.
Yeah, I mean, the head coaching thing to me has always been interesting in all these collegiate sports because no one leaves a professional job for another. Like in the NFL, you rarely leave a job for another one. You get fired and you get
I was
picked up
more
by
surprised
someone
about
else.
Lincoln Riley. That one surprised me.
Well, Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly, both of them, you leave really good jobs. And I get where Brian Kelly has
As
more
the most winning
flexibility at
coach
LSU.
too. Yeah, and Brian Kelly became he won the most football games at Notre Dame, right, and then immediately left. So,
I mean, Lincoln
yeah,
Riley,
it's surprising.
I guess he fits in more
He
of like a
wanted palm
USC
trees and
type of guy.
sunshine. Oklahoma
I don't know.
and California are much different, but
I just don't know how you leave a place like Oklahoma. And I
he's not
understand,
going to be the guy anymore. Like in Oklahoma, it's football, and you go to California and they got everything. I mean, it's kind of like New York. Like there's too much to zone in on one thing. Like look at all the powerful fan bases and teams. It's their heartbeat. Like when they were talking about canceling the football season, the SEC is like, absolutely not. We can't. That's literally it's their livelihood. So in California, it's not the story. That's not the case.
It's just very fascinating what some of these. I think it's more like not necessarily these guys leaving to take other jobs. It's the process of them. Like who approached Lincoln Riley about taking the USC job when you have this cushy job at Oklahoma. Brian Kelly's been at Notre Dame forever, it feels like, and then I'm out. I'm going to the SEC. I'm going to LSU. That how these conversations start, who's doing this behind the scenes, and obviously, like these coaches we talk about in college basketball, yeah, it's very easy to leave a mid-major to go to the SEC. Like I don't fault anybody for doing that ever because it's a better job, better livelihood. But how these conversations start always kind of
those two,
it's very it just always kind of made me think like, wow, this is a really interesting process.
The LSU one kind of was shorter. I mean, Coach O, we knew he was leaving during the season, but USC for a while they were looking. But I think they left for different reasons. Like Brian Kelly can win a national championship in the SEC because Notre Dame has that barrier of no conference championship. The committee does consider that it's a hard barrier for them to get to, and then when they get to the playoff, they usually fall short. But Lincoln Riley, you are in the perfect position to win a national championship. Like you're in the playoffs regularly. So the only reason he left, I think, would be not professional reasons. I think more so personal reasons. It's the sunshine. It's sunshine and beach and Cali living. So I think they were very different paths to that decision. I think because Brian Kelly could get to a national championship with LSU.
Well, and also the recruiting just opens up. I mean, Notre Dame's a tough school to recruit to, and LSU is easier. And
I think Notre Dame you can recruit well because
I think it's only so much. I feel like LSU it's like just more open, and he did a really good job getting players in there. But you can just open it up more. It's a hard school. I mean, it's a hard school to recruit to.
Yeah, because like in the Midwest, like Michigan and Ohio State, they're usually the most powerful. But Notre Dame, like we've lost recruits to Notre Dame because you have the academic side of it. Like,
yeah,
a lot of guys are realistic and they know I'm not 1% getting to the NFL. I would love to get a degree from Notre Dame, but I think that's a good attraction for not for the SEC is like you go there to play football. I think that's why they're actually not going into the super conference thing because the Big 10 and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 just kind of follow. They have that strong alliance like we're standing around because of their loyalty to the student athlete, to academics, where the SEC is money hungry and football runs the show. That's what I do love about the Big 10. They do look at the student athlete for the longevity of their life, not just they're going to play football for a few years, but they're like, we want to build you up to be a full-rounded person in the real world, professional, all of that. So hopefully that's what holds him back from a super conference, because I like the tradition of college athletics. It's on its path to changing, but we're holding it down through the Big 12, Pac-12, Big 12 alliance.
Well, before we get out of here, Stephanie, for today, who do you like the most tonight in the Sweet 16?
Tonight, let's see.
Tonight.
I'm looking at
Actually, but we'll do both nights. Thursday, since you're on tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. Is there one that really sticks
I'll
out
do
to
one
you?
for tonight. The one I mean, it might be an easy one. The one I feel most comfortable winning it is Gonzaga over Arkansas. And I would say Villanova too. I think that Texas Tech and Houston are capable of pulling off the upset. I don't like seeing that because I have Arizona winning it all. But those are the two I feel the most comfortable. Either way, they're all going to be great games. I think in the following day, I don't think I'm not as upset favorable. I don't think St. Peter's will beat Purdue. But I'd rather take Purdue to cover that 12.5. I mean, I don't think, or yeah, I would take St. Peter's to cover it because I don't think that Purdue will keep it 12.5. I think St. Peter's can be competitive. Kansas Providence, that one I'd pass on. That one's tricky for me. And I do think UNC could pull off an upset over UCLA, but I have Miami beating Iowa State. So those are all my flat out wins. But my best of them all, I would probably say St. Peter's to cover.
Okay. I still like Michigan tonight. I feel like everyone's on Villanova. I just think that I don't know. I just think that Michigan, they're playing well. And look, Villanova's a quality team. I think they've won 11 of 12, and the only losses by 2 points during this stretch. So I'm not, everybody that's, for the exception of maybe St. Peter's at this point, all these teams are, okay, I don't want to say St. Peter's isn't good, but we know, like, they pulled off 2 upsets. Like, we look at Arizona, Houston, Texas Tech, Gonzaga, Duke, UCLA, Kansas. Like, these are, like, top tier. Like, these are the best of the best. Down the stretch. Michigan is still very good. I still think Miami takes care of Iowa State tomorrow night in Chicago. Iowa State, who had those 2 slugfests, the first 2 rounds against an LSU team without their head coach, or they replaced Will Wade, and they were kind of a mess. And Wisconsin, who can be inconsistent at times. Miami beat a good USC team. They upset Auburn. Miami's a veteran team. I think Miami takes care of business. That's the one I like the most tomorrow night. UCLA, North Carolina is a very tough game.
Yeah, that one's really tough. That one I'm not. I lean towards UNC, but I'm not betting it. I'm not fully confident in that game. Which one do you think is? Which one is the hardest game to bet? Is that your hardest? Is that your hardest game to bet of the week?
Yes.
I think Houston, Arizona is tough too. Yeah, I think that one's tough too. That one. If Houston pulls off the upset, I'm completely out. I'm officially out of my bracket pool. Like, eliminate me, because I'm one of the only few people with Arizona left, and that's like my shot to win it all. Houston pulls off the upset, and I'm just done for.
But I don't even know if that's an upset if Houston wins this game against Arizona, because Houston's a really good team. Okay, fine. I'm going to ask you this then. Besides St. Peter's beating Purdue, what is the one result, not ATS, straight up, the one straight up result that would shock you over the next 2 days besides St. Peter's?
It's hard to say shock in March just because you expect the unexpected. Yeah. I would be very surprised over St. Peter's to win the game. I do like them to cover. The most shocking, I would say Arkansas over Gonzaga. I mean, I differ with you in Michigan, but I would be more surprised over Arkansas over Gonzaga.
Look, Arkansas is the last SEC team left. They got to hold down the fort because everyone else blew it in the SEC, so they're the last ones. I mean,
woo, pig suey.
Maybe Providence for me.
We do not like Providence. We do not like Providence on the show.
I'm telling you. You know what? Well, let's see something. Hold on.
On the Sweet 16 video, I have Providence as the guy she told you not to worry about because I'm never worried about Providence, and they just keep proving me wrong.
You know who's going to play in the championship game, right? It's going to be Providence and Purdue, the two teams that we said would never make it.
I mean, I made myself look like an idiot over the week when everyone made the brackets. I'm like, what are you doing with Purdue? What are you doing with Purdue? What are you doing with Purdue? And now, like, I had Wisconsin in my Final Four, and all the other Big Ten teams just. I've learned. Hey, was I wrong? I said it like the past month and a half. I can't rely on Big Ten basketball teams. I can't. I could probably rely on SEC basketball teams more than Big Ten, honestly, and they only have one left.
But the SEC having 5 teams getting knocked out by double-digit seeds is still the best story of the tournament. Like, that's just like because the SEC is so tough. Like, you couldn't beat any of these teams, and the only exception I'll give is Tennessee because Michigan's not a real like 11. Like Michigan's still a good team, so I'll give Tennessee a break. But Auburn getting blown out by Miami.
That one shocked me.
Losing to St. Peter's.
Auburn was the most shocking to me.
I'll give LSU a break. I'll give LSU a break because they had to deal with coaching stuff, and now they were put in a bad spot there. I think they were a little probably overseeded. But Auburn and Kentucky were the biggest losers. I mean, Alabama lost to Notre Dame, but Notre Dame almost beat Texas Tech, so I can't really get on Alabama for that. But Alabama was wildly inconsistent the whole season. So, but Kentucky and Auburn, you were the biggest losers of the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. And in high school, we had this chant, like we would always be across the bleachers. And whenever we were losing a basketball game, but we just were so dominant football, we would always like chant across the bleachers, let's play football. So that's what I'm thinking for the SEC right now. Like they're just saying, they're like, yeah, wait for fall where you guys get to just rise to glory. But at least my conference can hang a little bit. We only have one more team in there, but we can hang on a little bit longer in basketball.
Yeah, you're depending on Michigan and Purdue.
We're the most balanced conference, though. Big 12 has a little bit more balance, but they don't have like dominant football teams now that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. So I'll take that title back.
Iowa State made it further than Baylor did. That's pretty funny, actually.
Well, wait, hey, you and I did think that Baylor would be an easy. I didn't think that they would lose the first week, but like it's hard to win back-to-back tournaments. They weren't fully healthy. Like there was a lot of hype on them. That's one team I faded. I tried to fade Gonzaga, but you just can't. For at least for the championship game, I can. Final Four, I'm not. I did in my bracket, but I don't. I still think that they could get there. The Texas Tech and Gonzaga game for me is going to be the biggest game of the full tournament.
It's assuming Coach K doesn't work his magic.
If they get there.
Yeah, you never know. Like that's such a. I like Texas Tech, but that's still a very difficult game with Duke because.
Will this be Coach K's last game? Could be tonight.
Goes up to CBS. No.
I see. That's like that. I mean, I just wait till Twitter. Like, just jump on Twitter and see what's like. That'll be 100% of the conversation. We should start one of those Twitter rooms where you can talk about it. I'm sure it'd be a couple thousand people in there chatting it up about how Duke's getting a lot of good looks in tonight's game.
Well, again, let's see how it goes. Like, I think we can have the conversation after. If Duke takes care of them, it's one thing. But if it gets down to the end and you're like, oh, here's a foul call and Duke goes to the line and they're just trying to save Coach K and just continue this thing. But
I mean, but it's good. I mean, it will be a close game. I don't think it's gonna. I mean, we won't see a blowout tonight. I don't think. If we saw a blowout tonight, I think it would be Gonzaga, Arkansas. There's gonna be no blowout.
These are so tough. These games are just getting so tough at this point. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Too bad we won't have the afternoon games, only night games. But no, it'll be good. So check out Stephanie's video on Twitter and Instagram. The Sweet 16. You can check it out. It really is funny. And again, it brings back memories if you were on MTV back 15-ish years ago, whenever it was, I guess, 2006, 2007, sometime around there. And check that out. It's pretty funny. And
before social media was even a thing. So
I know. Yeah. Imagine if all of them were on, and Nolan's phones were that creative. They were like, you could just text on it and that was it. Maybe you take some pictures.
Yeah.
But
like T9 word. Oh my gosh. I bet no Gen Z know T9 word. Like the buttons. Do you remember that? Like there was no autocorrect, or there was a T9 word, but it was like buttons. Yeah. Times have changed. No GPS on the phone would have been a nightmare. The GPS on the phone would probably be, I feel like I always had a GPS on my phone when I had my car.
Yeah.
So that's because I've never had to deal with like a, is it Magellan? Is that like the GPS you bought that was not part of your phone?
I just printed up directions. That's what you had to do. Write them
oh
down.
My God, you did MapQuest? MapQuest is old school.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest technological advances on your phone. Be like, oh, where are you? Okay, I can type in the address, and then
you take a wrong turn, and MapQuest ain't helping you out.
Nope.
Like, what's this printout going to do when you're no longer on that street?
All right, Steph. We will talk to you again on Tuesday, and we'll have the Final Four. So looking forward to
you and I got Texas Tech. You swayed me to go Texas Tech. Come on.
I know, and they've won 2 now. You gotta get through Duke and maybe Gonzaga. So
I feel good. I feel like we can take Duke again, maybe unless it's like non-basketball things make it why we lose. But the Michigan Villanova game, I could stomp you on. So all right,
I'll be
Texas
interested
Tech.
to see if I'm way off on that one. But our thanks to Bruce Marshall for joining us today on the show. And we'll be back on tomorrow at noon Eastern. Tom Carroll will be on with me. And we'll talk more movies with Tom Cunningham with the Oscars coming up as well. Stephanie will be back on Tuesday. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And again, as always, best of luck with your bets.